All right, how's everybody doing? My name is Francisco Cantu, and today is Tuesday. I know I usually go live on Facebook and YouTube on Mondays. However, today we are doing all four platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at the same time. So I am down here to my right. I have the Instagram phone going on. On the left, I have TikTok, and then ahead of me, the camera that is going live on Facebook and YouTube. They're all running at the same time, so I will be trying my best to multitask and keep track of all the comments, of all your questions, and yeah, do another live stream session. If this is your first time here, do know, let me explain to you, for those of you who are first timers in these live streams, I go live every week, usually on Mondays and Tuesdays, but today I'm combining them all on a Tuesday four-way live stream. And pretty much I do presentations that are topically relevant to whatever is going on in the world of college admissions. So for example, whenever we are approaching October, I do presentations related to the FAFSA, the CSS profile, all those financial aid forms. And right now, since we are right now in the process of waiting for college decisions, today I'm going to be focusing on going over common mistakes that parents make or that families make when it's time to pay for college. As a matter of fact, that is the topic of today's presentation. So if you are watching on Instagram, if you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, you'll be able to share my slides. And let me share my slides right here on Instagram. Boom. All right, cool. If you're watching on TikTok, you're not going to be able to see the slides that I'm sharing. But if you're watching on Instagram, then you can see the screen that I'm sharing, the title of today's presentation. It's called Don't Make These Mistakes When Paying for College. And again, I'm going to give it a few more minutes for more people to join. But the way that these presentations go is I do the presentation quickly. It usually takes me between 20, 25 minutes, 30, 35 minutes, depending on how much or how in depth I go. And then at the end of every presentation, I finish with a Q&A session. So you can think of these live streams as sort of office hours, in which, let's say, you have your free high school counselor, it's available and it's at your disposal at your local high school. But because they're tending to 400 other students at the same time, they might not have the resources to meet one-on-one with you. So you can use this opportunity to ask your questions. And if you are sharing your questions on Instagram, on Facebook and YouTube, I have the ability to share your questions on the screen. So right now, there's a comment from Laura who's helping me monitor the chat saying, hello, everyone. If you're watching on TikTok and Instagram, I won't be able to share your comments, but I will be reading them out loud when I get to the Q&A session at the end. So just make sure to ask your questions. And again, Laura is helping me monitor the chat on all four platforms. So on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. So if you ask a question, again, just to go over a little bit of housekeeping and logistics for today's presentation, let's say you ask a question and I am going on with the presentation and I'm going on a long monologue and I don't get to it right away, there is a possibility, or there is a scenario in which Laura gets to answer the question on the chat before I even get to it. So I would just be sure, or I would keep an eye out for the chat, so that if you ask a question, you don't think that I'm ignoring it. I'm just going through with the presentation, and then either Laura's going to get to it right away, or I'm going to get to it at the end when we get to the Q&A portion of the presentation. All right, so it's 7:23. It's been 8 minutes because I started this live stream at 7:15. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with the presentation. Do ask your questions. Let me know where you are watching from. And if you want to, again, stay up to date with everything that we post, whether it's these live streams or all the content that we post on our Instagram and our Facebook, you can follow our socials at Best College Aid USA. That's our handle across the board for all of our platforms, whether that is Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or Facebook. And again, that's just for you to know if you're interested in following us across the different platforms. All right. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get started with today's presentation. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, today I'm going to be talking about common mistakes that people make when they are paying for college. So let's get started with a little bit of context. And for context, I want to talk a little bit about the cost of going to college and why I even need to make a presentation like this. Because in different countries and outside of the US, paying for college is not as much of an issue because whether it's subsidized by the US government or whether the privatized institutions have figured out a way to make it affordable for everyone, it's not something that is, again, a topic of concern as much as it is in the US. So to give you all some context, the cost of going to college, and this information I pulled up from the latest, the 2021-2022 school year, and, 2020-2021 school year. And pretty much it just talks about the average cost of going to college depending on the type of institution that you go to. So, for example, if you go to a 4-year in-state college, the average cost is going to be $9,000. You have additional expenses, housing, meal plan, you have your travel expenses. All of that make it they add an additional $16,000. So the average cost of attendance to going to college, to a 4-year in-state public college, is $25,000. Now, let's say you are in Florida and you want to go to school out of state. Obviously, because you're going to school out of state, it might not be subsidized by your own local, state government. So the cost of going to college out of state tends to be more expensive when it comes to the sticker price. Again, later on, we're going to be talking about merit-based scholarships, need-based scholarships that are going to bring this cost down. But just to keep this frame of reference, the cost of tuition for a 4-year out-of-state college is $27,000. So obviously, it goes up a lot, and in theory, it's way more expensive to go to college out of state. You add the same $16,000 with housing, with a meal plan, and other personal expenses, and you end up with a cost of attendance for going out of state of $43,000. Now, that is for public institutions, for 4-year colleges. If you go to a 2-year in-state school, you end up paying $3,000 for tuition, additional $12,000 for additional expenses, and you end up paying around $15,000. And again, all these are estimates, but I'm only sharing this with you so that you get a context as to why we're even having this presentation and how the cost of going to college can be very, very expensive. But don't worry, later on in the presentation, I'm going to be talking about ways in which you can bring this cost down. But again, that was for public institutions. When you get to private institutions, and there's a common misconception, or there is this big narrative that I encounter a lot year to year, and that is people talking about how they don't apply to private institutions because they are not going to be able to afford them because they tend to be more expensive. And while this is the case when it comes to the sticker price with the cost of tuition and the additional expenses for going to those private institutions, the truth of the matter is that there are very generous private institutions. But for the sake of sticking with laying out the context of the cost of college, the cost of tuition for a 4-year private institution is $35,000. Okay, so $35,000, and then you add $17,000 for additional expenses, you end up paying around $53,000 in costs of attendance. All right, so that is the context as to why being smart and having a strategy, and why you need to prepare for bearing the cost or approaching the cost of going to college is super, super important. Okay, so I just wanted to put those numbers out there so that you understand the source of the problem, or why I'm even having this presentation. But now let's go ahead and talk about some solutions. And I have 3 steps or 3 main points that I want to hit in today's presentation, revolving ways in which you can bring this cost of attendance down. So let me go ahead and change the slide. If you're watching on TikTok and you want to see the slides, you can go ahead and check us out on Best College Aid USA on Instagram, or go on YouTube and Facebook, and I'm sharing the slides right there. So as you probably could have guessed, the main way in which you can bring those costs of attendance that I was talking about is to reduce, again, what you have to pay for college through financial aid and scholarships. Okay, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to be elaborating more on how to do this later on. But pretty much, if you think about it on a balance sheet, and if you think about how you're going to pay for college, on one side you have, all of your costs. You have everything that you have to pay for tuition, for a meal plan, for housing, for personal expenses, for traveling, accommodations, all that stuff. And then on the other side, to counter that, you have all of your financial aid, all of your scholarships, all of your grants. In a way, you can think of loans as going as a way to counter the cost of attendance, even though you have to pay those back. We're going to elaborate on that a little bit more later on. But yeah, the more you get on one side in terms of funds going towards your education, obviously the less that has to come out of pocket for the cost of attendance, the final cost of attendance. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about some colleges, and we're going to be sharing ways in which you can filter out institutions so that you end up with a final list of colleges between 8 to 12 institutions that are all made up of universities that meet over 90% of demonstrated financial need by a household, okay? Because the name of the game, a lot of people make the mistake of only applying to schools based on what their friends are doing, what the popular in-state school that they grew up, rocking that sweatshirt when they were going to high school. That's perfectly fine, but if they don't make some sort of alignment between what their financial situation is at the household level and what they want to study, and only apply to a university based on optics, then they might be running the risk of attending institutions that don't provide the financial support necessary for them to graduate without debt, without taking out predatory loans with high interest rates. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit more later on, okay? And then next thing that I want to talk about before moving on to the actual 3 pointers that I wanted to hit is making sure that the colleges that you end up applying to, and again, I talked about 8 to 12 schools, are all made up of institutions that have a history of providing merit-based awards to families or to students who practice the same extracurriculars or the same clubs or have the same track record as you do when it comes to what you practice or what your student practice throughout their high school career. Because again, applying to schools that don't have that track record and that do not give out those merit-based awards, then you're running the risk of not capitalizing off the efforts that you went through in high school, as well as having to find funds to pay for that institution or for that college all by yourself through loans, through having to use your savings accounts, through having to work a job throughout college, which again are all good things in terms of, paying for it as long as they're not predatory loans. But again, the end goal here is to get as much of the chunk of cost of attendance paid for through grants, scholarships, financial aid, and if necessary, a work-study program or something like that, all right? So let's get started with the first pointer or the first tip that I have for you all related to this topic. So I'm going to go ahead and share this slide right now. Okay, so that is it for Instagram, and then on YouTube and Facebook, that should change the slide. All right, so big mistake that parents make or that students make is failing to complete the necessary financial aid forms. And what I mean by this is there are two very popular forms that you probably have heard about: the FAFSA, Free Application for Federal Student Aid, and the CSS Profile. And I like to take a second whenever I encounter topics like this to talk about common misconceptions. Okay, so another common misconception, as we talked about earlier with private colleges, people thinking that they're always going to be super, super expensive. There's another misconception when it comes to financial aid forms, because a lot of people believe that you have to have a lot of demonstrated financial need or make below a certain threshold of money in order to receive funds that are unlocked through filling out the FAFSA. Okay, so in other words, sometimes or oftentimes I hear families or students say, oh, my family is too poor to pay for college, but too well off to qualify for financial aid and scholarships. Okay, so that is something that I hear a lot. And if you've heard about that before, you can let me know in the chat if that's something that you've heard. But something that I wanted to talk about in regards to these financial aid forms, specifically the FAFSA and the CSS Profile, is that money that gets unlocked through the FAFSA, whether it's at the federal level or at the institutional level, it can be unlocked by one or two ways. Number one, through need. As a lot of people say, if you have a lot of demonstrated need, then you might receive need-based aid. But another aspect or other sorts of awards that are given out through these forms are merit-based awards. And what these are, a lot of times, especially around this time of year, we have a lot of students in Best College Aid who, they get their acceptances and they share their financial aid award package. And oftentimes they will see in their financial aid award package or their award letter that there are, all of the money that they got from, the federal government and all of the money that they got at the institutional level. And they will get something like the the Presidential Leadership Scholarship. Or if they're going to be a student athlete, then they have some sort of line that says, oh, you're getting for, as part of your athletic scholarship, X amount of money, or as part of some sort of internalized institutional scholarship based on service or volunteer hours, you're going to get this amount of money, okay? But and that is completely and exclusively based on the merit of the student, what they did throughout high school or what they're going to continue to do throughout college, that they're earning those awards. It's completely unrelated and has nothing to do with the finances of the household. But it is necessary in order to receive that money based on their own merit. It is still necessary for them to fill out this financial aid forms. Even though, again, they might not have demonstrated need, a prerequisite to get merit-based awards could be to fill out the FAFSA or the CSS profile. So by having that assumption, or by automatically assuming that, oh, I make too much money to qualify for need-based awards, you could be running the risk of self-disqualifying from merit-based awards, okay? So that's something that you don't want to do. My mentality here, and something that we teach our students in Best College Aid, is the return on investment, or the potential amounts of money that you could get from filling out this form, makes it a no-brainer to just take the time, whether it's going to take you 30 minutes because you have all of the necessary documentation laid out, and a lot of our students in Best College Aid, they just watch a tutorial and they fill it out like that. Or let's say you're completely lost, you don't know where to start, you don't know how to fill out the FAFSA, the CSS profile, and it takes you, even if it's a whole day of research and a whole day of asking your parents for their help and to get involved, even if it takes you a day or two, it's still like the potential rewards that you could unlock from, again, merit-based awards, and if you qualify for need-based aid, makes it completely a no-brainer to just fill out the form, because the worst that they can say is that you get little to no aid, and it only took you a little bit, some time to fill out these forms. It's not like college is going to become more expensive if you fill it out and you don't get any sort of merit-based award, and again, or need-based awards, okay? So again, it just makes no sense not to fill it out, because you could potentially get thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars per year between need-based and merit-based awards, okay? And in order to make this as time efficient, or as, have the highest potential yield of returns, or get the best results, is to strategically make a list of universities that are known to be very generous with students with finances similar to your households, okay? So not all schools, and this is something, if you've watched our live streams before, you will know that not all schools are equally as generous, and I'm going to elaborate more on this a little bit later on. But because not all schools are equally as generous, making sure that your list of schools is comprised of institutions that have a history of satisfying above a certain threshold of financial need for students in similar finances as yours is super, super crucial, because if you do that, then all the schools that accept you are going to be generous schools, and then later on you can use that to your advantage to leverage financial aid award packages, renegotiate, and potentially increase the financial aid award package that you receive, okay? And the last few things that I want to cover in terms of this first point, or first piece of advice, is to make sure that when you make your list of colleges, you keep track of which ones apply or require the CSS profile, because some schools will only require the free application for federal student aid. Others will require the CSS profile as well. So just make sure that when you make your list of colleges, you keep track of which ones require what, and you fill out all necessary documentation, and that you fill out this documentation as early as possible after October 1st of your student's senior year of high school and onwards, because a lot of the money that gets unlocked through these forms gets given out on a first come, first served basis, okay? So you want to make sure that the sum of money, or the pool of money that you are becoming eligible to receive money from, is as big as possible, and you do that by filling out these forms as early as possible after October 1st, okay? Good. So that's all I wanted to cover in point number 1. Now let's move on to the second tip, or a common mistake that I want you all to avoid and take advantage of learning about right now, and that is not applying to private or state scholarships. That's a big mistake, and let's go over why there's a something or a common pitfall or something that you want to make sure that you don't fall under. Okay, so every year there are $6 billion in private scholarships, and what I mean by private scholarships is money that is available for students in the form of grants, of scholarships, of money going directly to their pockets, and that is given out by private corporations, charities, religious groups, and other sorts of private entities. Okay, so whatever you're never going to be in a period of your life, or very rarely in your life, you're going to be in a situation in which you could potentially receive $500, $1,000, $2,000, whatever, $5,000 for just filling out a form and writing an essay or sending your transcripts. All right. And a lot of this money, a lot of the $6 billion that are available every year for students to apply for private scholarships, there's a big chunk of this money that gets left on the table because people don't apply to these. Now, I have two main things that I want to cover with regards to private scholarships. And these are the two main tips that we go over in more depth with our best college age students. But I just want to make sure that you all know of the key pointers and you get valuable takeaways from this presentation. Number one is the more specific, the better. So, for example, if you are, let's say you live in South Florida, you are an immigrant of Hispanic heritage, and I don't know, you wear glasses, right? This is just an example. I'm not speaking of a specific scholarship. I don't have one in mind, but let's just say that you use scholarship search engines, Scholarly, FastWeb, Check.com, the College Board website, and through these filters, because you can, use these filters to find scholarships that are more and more specific, you find something that is tailor-made for you in regards to the qualifications required for you to apply for that scholarship. All right. The more specific that a scholarship is, the better odds you have of receiving, because it eliminates a lot of the competition. And for example, if you apply to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, even though it's a full ride scholarship or it's, tens of thousands of dollars, I'm not saying not to do it, but what I am saying is it might be a better use of your time to focus on applying to very specific small scholarships, even if it's a $500 scholarship, a $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 scholarships that are for a very specific niche and groups of people who maybe practice a specific sport or are members of a certain demographic or have displayed certain leadership qualifications. So again, the more specific and the more hurdles there are to become eligible to receive that scholarship, the less competition there is likely to be, because again, those qualifications eliminate a lot of the potential applicants, and it might be a better use of your time, even if you're only getting, again, $1,000 at a time or $2,000 at a time. That's better than only applying to the big Coca-Cola scholarship or whatever, insert any other big name scholarship here that pays, your full tuition, but that only gives out one or two awards every year between or among 10,000 applicants. Okay, so one of them you have higher chances of receiving, and the other one it becomes very, very unlikely. And again, I'm not saying not to apply for the big ones. Do so, but do not do so at the expense of the specific smaller scholarships. So that's point number one that I wanted to cover in regards to private scholarships. Point number two is a lot of people believe, going back to this whole misconceptions and urban legends that you hear about in the world of college admissions, a lot of people believe that you can only apply to private scholarships during a student's senior year of high school. And while right now, especially, like February and March of a student's senior year of high school is when, they just got done submitting all their college applications and writing all the essays, and, they're used to doing so much work for college, and then once January or mid-January rolls around and all their applications have been submitted, then all of a sudden they're like, okay, now what? We just wait? And that's usually when they start applying or filling out forms for private scholarships, and that's great. Do so. It's better than doing nothing. But I don't want you to stop now, or if you're not a senior yet, do not think that this semester, so spring semester of your senior year is the only time that you can apply to private scholarships. There are scholarships that a student becomes eligible to receive as early as freshman year of high school, and you can continue to apply for private scholarships well into your junior year of college. Okay, so yes, there is a bell curve distribution of how many scholarships are available depending on the age group, and it does peak, and you have the most scholarships available for seniors in high school. However, there is still a great number of private scholarships available for students in before senior year of high school, whether that's freshman, sophomore, junior year of high school, and freshman, sophomore, and junior year of college. Okay, so it's all a matter of looking for them. And again, you can use search engines, Scholarly, FastWeb, Chegg. You can go to the College Board website. They have great resources there. And another thing, and this is something that I talked about in a live stream a few weeks ago, and I see that there are some questions. For example, JC Rose is asking on Facebook, how do I find these scholarships? And I see Karen LaRose is asking on Instagram, some private scholarships in New York for students in another state. Okay, so those are quite similar questions. They're all related to how to find these private scholarships. So yeah, I just listed out a bunch of search engines. Again, Scholarly, FastWeb, the College Board's website, Chegg. Those are great tools, and be very specific. But an additional resource that can help you find these scholarships. Earlier on, I was talking about how there is, on average, 408 students per one high school counselor. Okay, so the college counselors that are designated to your student through their high school are obviously overwhelmed, and even if they have the best intentions and they want to help as many students as possible, they just lack the infrastructure to sit down every year with every single one of the 408 students, and then also address their parents, and also give them specific information, and have these sort of one-on-one conversations that I'm right now having with you all. Granted, it's through your phone, through your screens, but it's still better than nothing. But what does end up happening here is that because they cannot possibly reach every single student, high school, college counselors tend to pay the most attention to students who proactively go towards them and ask for help. And this is very, very relevant, or very, very much the case when it comes to scholarships, to private scholarships. So oftentimes, the high school counselors, the high school college counselors in your student's high school will have a list of private scholarships that are specific and that are local to your area, that are local to where you live, or that are eligible, or that students in your high school are eligible to receive, and that they might have recommended a student within your high school to earn that money up the year before or 2 years before that, or someone within the same county to receive. So it's always a good idea to, on top of all the search engines that I already listed, to go directly to your student's high school counselor and ask them if they have a list of local scholarships, and they don't have to be big name scholarships. As a matter of fact, it might even be better if there are small scholarships that are specific to your county, to your region, to your district, to your city, because again, competition might be a little bit less than if there are big national scholarships, which might be the case if you don't put the specific search filters on all the search engines that I just talked about earlier. Okay, so Rose, Karen, I hope that that answers both of your questions. Great questions. All right. And then the final tip, or the final topic that I want to talk about in today's presentation before we go to the Q&A session that I always end these presentations with, is a big mistake that parents make is, or that students make, or that families make after they get accepted to college, and when it comes to when it's time to pay for college, is not making a counter offer. Okay, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, but this is something that earlier on I was talking about, the return on investment, how much effort it takes to do an activity versus how much money or how much benefit you could get from whatever it costs. Okay, and when it comes to paying for college, a lot of people, once they get accepted, they're very excited. They receive a financial aid award letter in the mail that outlines how much scholarships and how much financial aid they're going to be receiving. They believe this to be final, and they either are satisfied with what they were offered, or if they're not satisfied, they settle with what's being offered, and they either take out loans, which in some cases might have very high interest rates, or might have there might not be unsubsidized, or they might require the parents to be a co-signer, which implicates the parents and their finances. So that tends to be the case if a student doesn't receive enough financial aid and awards for college. So I proposed a third course of action rather than either just being happy, satisfied, and accepting it, or being dissatisfied but still having to go through the effort of taking out loans or not going to college. Something that you can do is make a counteroffer. And the way in which you can successfully, and what we teach inside Best College Aid, our members, they get a template as to how they can reach out to the financial aid award package. But in essence, what you would have to do is, granted, some schools might have their own specific procedures. So first of all, what I'm saying, before you even do anything of what I'm saying, research whether or not the school that you are interested in making a counter offer to already has systems in place, because some of them might have specific forms that you have to fill out, or they might require specific documentation, maybe your tax returns, maybe a some sort of letter that explains any sort of change in your family's financial situation, whether it was a parent getting fired or whether it was someone in the family getting sick. Again, always start off by researching if your school or the school that you intend to counteroffer already has systems in place. But if you cannot find this information, it's always a great idea to start out by reaching out to the financial aid award package, to the financial aid award office, financial aid office at the specific school you're going to. Reach out with a friendly email, a phone call, explain your situation, explaining what sum of money might be necessary for you to start considering or realistically consider going to that institution, that you want to go to that school, but that the only thing keeping you from it is money. It's also very helpful if you have already an acceptance letter or an award package from a different school that's offering you more money. And if you can corroborate it with, again, documentation explaining a financial change in your household, or explaining something that affected your family's finances, like an illness, that will be very, very beneficial. Okay. And then another thing that I wanted to talk about with regards to making counter offers is, if you have someone in the institution, whether it's a coach, a teacher, someone who's in charge of a program or lab or something that you know you will be involved in when you get to college. And again, this could be a sport, this could be theater club, this could be anything. If you have an anchor or a point of contact, and you're interested in negotiating, or you really need an increase in the institutional awards being offered to you, it's always a great idea to reach out to them and talk about how you can increase your performance, whether these be athletic statistics, or whether these be, extracurricular activities, or whether this be anything that you can do in order to increase the institutional awards being offered to you, specifically if they're related to an activity for which you're going to college for. All right. So that is all that I had prepared for today's presentation. Before we get to the Q&A session, I'm going to go and check out all the Instagram, the TikTok, the Facebook, and the YouTube comment sections, and I'm going to answer all the questions. But I do want to let you all know that, number one, this live stream is going to be recorded and it's going to be posted on Facebook and YouTube, as well as my Instagram profile. So if you go to Best College Aid USA, you're going to be able to see the recording of this live stream posted on our page. So if I went too fast, or if I said something that was of a lot of value and you want to rewatch it, or you want to share it with someone, you can go to Best College Aid USA on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, and you're going to be able to see this recording. And number two, today in the presentation, I focused on the financial aspect of college. Okay, I focused a lot and I talked a lot about increasing your financial aid award package, negotiating your award letter that's being offered to you, private scholarships, financial aid forms, the FAFSA, the CSS profile. But if you want to learn not just about the financial aspect of college, but for example, how to increase odds of acceptance. And I know one of the questions, for example, in TikTok is related to the competitiveness of a college application based on grades, and I will be answering in just a second. But if you're interested in the process as a whole, not just the financing aspect of college, but the how to increase odds of acceptance before you even have to pay for it, then we do have a free training in the link in my bio. I wrote this training, I recorded it, it's pre-recorded. So right now I'm live and I'm giving this presentation. The training, I planned it ahead of time and I give out not just information that I covered in today's live stream, but on top of that same information, elements from the whole aspect as a whole, the whole college application process as a whole. And I always like to be very transparent. One of the reasons why I'm able to come live here as I do every week for a few hours, and the reason why I can answer these questions is because we do have a paid program. And again, I'm going to continue to answer your questions no matter what, but I do want to let you all know that if on top of this live stream presentation, if you find value in my answers, in the way that I explain things, and you want to learn more about how you can get more personalized support and advising beyond just these weekly live streams, then you can certainly stay until the end of that presentation. And again, the presentation is not just one big commercial. I give out 45 minutes of value, and then at the end I talk about the program. So there's really no risk there. You just, worst case scenario, you get a free presentation with tips on going to college and how to get scholarships and increase odds of acceptance. But let's say you watch this, you got value, you watch a presentation, you got value, and you want to learn even more, or you want to learn more about our program, the Best College Aid Full Pay Program, you can go ahead and stay to the end of that presentation, and we do share a 60% discount at the end, okay? But again, that is completely unrelated to this Q&A session that I'm about to answer, but I do want to let you all know of that free resource, and that is if you check the link in my bio. If you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, let me just share my screen for a second. So right now, that's the YouTube video or the interface that you are watching me from. If you scroll down to the description and you go under free training, there is a link to the presentation, and that's me and Laura who is doing the support. If you see a Best College Aid account answering questions, that has been Laura, who is here in the landing page. You just register for free, and that's all you have to do to join the free training. Again, 45 minutes, no strings attached, and at the end we do talk and share a specific discount for those of you who are interested, okay? Same in YouTube, in Instagram and TikTok. If you're watching us down below on those platforms, you can just go to my profile and check out the link in my bio, all right? With that being said, let me go ahead and do the Q&A portion of the presentation. As promised, I'm going to go back on all of the chats and see if there are any questions that I didn't get to answer, okay? So JC Rose, I believe I answered this question, but some people might have joined in late, so let me go ahead and read it and share with you all. How do I find these scholarships? This question was asked specifically when I was going over private scholarships. So when it comes to finding private scholarships, there are many resources, and you're going to find a lot if you go online, but usually the most common ones are FastWeb, Chegg, Scholly. You can go on the College Board's website. And on top of all these search engines, which again, I recommend using and getting very specific with your filters, because if you can find very specific scholarships, then your odds or your eligibility requirements take away a lot of the competition that otherwise comes along with big name scholarships. But on top of these resources, I also recommend consulting with the high school counselor that is available, or the college counselor that's available in your student's high school. Why? Because they're so overwhelmed with hundreds of schools that they have to tend to that oftentimes they only pay attention, or that they share the resources with those who proactively come to them, asking them about resources like these. And they might have a list of scholarships that are local to your county, to your region, to your city, to your school even, that are otherwise not posted online on any of the resources that I shared already. So I always recommend that on top of using the search engines, you go directly to the college counselor at your student's high school and ask for a list of private scholarships, all right? Great question, all right? So that was JC Rose on Facebook. On TikTok, I have a question from BBXO5 saying, will colleges accept a D for Algebra 2 as a junior? My friend is very concerned. So the good news here is that there are over 3,500 colleges in the United States. So while maybe not every single institution, especially if they are top tier institutions that have a GPA requirement, not a requirement, but the 50 percentile of their students or their applicants have near a 4.0 GPA, yeah, those schools might be a little bit more skeptical about, accepting such a grade like a D in Algebra 2. But the point here, and what I recommend and what we teach our students, is there is a way to, once you make your list of colleges, 8 to 12 schools, or while you are making your list of colleges, you can look up something called a college's common data set. And what this does, there's a PDF that tells you exactly what are the statistics of the latest admitted students class at that university. And there are some universities, and you will see this across all common data sets. It will show you whether or not, or the degree to which a university values a specific aspect of the college application journey. So it will tell you if a school values or prioritizes SATs, ACTs, standardized test scores, or if they give more value to extracurricular activities, or if they give more value to volunteer hours, or if they give more value to GPA. So if you are a student who is maybe not the best student when it comes to their grades, but you are very sharp when it comes to taking tests, and your standardized tests are above average and certainly better in terms of how they stack up against the national average than, let's say, your GPA, then while you're making a list of colleges, you can prioritize, or you can give a heavier emphasis to schools that prioritize standardized test scores. Okay, so strategically picking schools to make your final college list of colleges that are, again, that heavily emphasize your areas of strengths is a great way to elevate the competitiveness, or elevate the name recognition per se of your list of colleges, because they can still be great institutions. It just so happens that they give more priority to the elements of the college application, or the aspects of the college application that are part of your strengths or your forte. Okay, so great question. One bad grade is not going to completely destroy your odds of acceptance. You can always tell a story, or you can use the essay portion to explain why that grade was bad. You can improve your grades the next semester, the next year. You can see if you can retake the class online. There are all sorts of ways to come back or recover from one bad grade. But I would certainly, if it's a recurring problem, I would certainly focus on finding schools that have a history, or that advertise through their common data sets, that they prioritize other elements of a college application, whether that be standardized test scores, or the interview, essays, extracurriculars, and so on and so forth. All right, excellent question. On Instagram, I believe I answered all of the questions. If you have any more, just let me know. Let me ask. Just ask them. And while I wait for more questions to come in, or as we wrap this up, I do want to take this chance to, once again, if you have not already done so, and again, this is completely unrelated to the live stream that I'm having right now. The reason why I'm able to come on here 2 hours a week and do these sorts of office hours and reach as many people as possible, because again, the goal here is to share as much information, answer as many questions as possible, is through the Best College Aid program, which we sponsor, and it's our program, and it's our paid program that, for those of you who beyond these live streams want to learn more about the college admissions process, you can check it out. We have a free presentation, the link in my bio, where we first give 45 minutes of value, similar to what I just did for the last hour. And then at the end, if you're interested, which you don't have to be interested, but if you are and you want to learn ways in which we can, on a more personalized way, guide you through the admissions journey and the college process, you can go ahead and check out the end of the presentation, because we do give a 60% discount to those of you who wanna join. All right. So I wanted to share that resource that's in the link in my bio. Ask your questions. Final call for questions before I end this presentation. And again, this live stream has been recorded and it will be posted on Facebook and YouTube, as well as on my Instagram page of Best College Aid USA. So if you join in late, go ahead and watch that recording if you so desire. And if you want an overview of the entire journey, not just what I talked about in today's presentation, which was common mistakes that parents make when paying for college, but you rather, take a step back and talk and overview and have an overview of the entire process and ways in which you can increase odds of acceptance, increase competitiveness, go ahead and check out the link in my bio. All right. Let's see, but I do have one final question with which I will finish up today's presentation, and that is from Connie Vargas, Realtor 7 Blue, and they are commenting, we are paying the Florida prepaid for my daughter for the four-year university, but we are concerned about the dorms, which is mandatory for the first-year students. If my daughter decided to go to college for the first 2 years, will be a difference? There might be more of the question coming up while I wait for more details on the question, because I'm a little unsure as to what the question is. But I do want to say that, yeah, when you are about to enroll in a college or a university, a lot of them have a policy that they require first-year students to live on campus, and that's something that's very specific to every school. I know that during COVID, a lot of universities made this policy optional, or they completely took that policy away and canceled it. They didn't require their students to live on campus. So with this, I would advise one of following things. Okay, so number one, you can always reach out to the university directly and talk about ways in which you can make an exception to living on campus. And see if through whether it is usually is the first year student office or the office for I believe it's usually called something along the lines of first year students or incoming freshman office, something along those lines. Whoever, or you could even do it through admissions, reach out and talk about exceptions to the policy of living on campus. And if they definitely need you to live on campus because they can make no exceptions, then within the university itself, there are ways in which you can sort and look through the different sorts of housing. There are housing options that are based on, housing options that are based on living in a suite with 7 other people. There are options in which you can live in just one dorm, which you share with another roommate. There are even options for students to live by themselves, that they don't have to share a room. And again, this is university by university specific, but even within the same university, you could have different options. Or I've heard of a lot of universities that for their first year students, they allow them to live in, not necessarily in campus housing. It's not the college dorms, but there are apartments that are in the local area that they might have some sort of agreement, or they might have some sort of policy that a first year student could go to those apartments if they are more, if those apartments are more in line with what they prefer for their first year experience to be, whether that is with the facilities, with the amenities, with how many roommates they have. So I would very much advise you, I don't know what specific school you're talking about or their policies, but I would certainly start off by contacting the college directly, talk about a potential exception if the student definitely wants to stay at home or they want to commute. And then if they cannot give you an exception, I would talk about potentially what are the different housing options and which ones they would be more comfortable with. And if it's completely a deal breaker, then I would certainly just look at other universities that might have different policies. I know that you mentioned that you have Florida prepaid. I would need to learn more about your specific situation to give a more specific piece of advice based on what you could do with that prepaid plan. But based on that limited information that you gave me, that would be my starting point. All right. So that was the final question that I was going to do for tonight. Again, if you came in later, you want to watch this recording, it will be posted on Instagram at Best College Aid USA, same as with our YouTube channel and Facebook page. And then if you want to, again, beyond this presentation that focused more on the finances and paying for college, if you want to take a step back and talk about the ways in which we teach our students to increase their odds of acceptance, how to go and navigate the process of, yes, financing, as we talked about in today's presentation, but also continuing to apply and receiving private scholarships throughout college, the best practices, even how to start building your credit once you get to college itself, then you can check out the free presentation in my link in bio. And again, that's 45 minutes of a training. It's shorter than this live stream. I've been live for an hour, so hopefully you got a lot of value there. But that free presentation is pre-recorded, and it's similar to this live stream in terms of me just answering questions, giving value. It is pre-recorded, but at the end, we talk about the full program, the full paid program, Best College Aid. We give a 60% discount for those of you who are interested in learning more beyond these free live streams and beyond that free presentation for those of you who want to learn more about our process and how we have helped our students get to great universities like Harvard, like Yale, like UPenn, like University of Miami. We have all sorts of success stories. So if you want to learn more about that, check out that free training. Link in my bio on Instagram and TikTok, and on Facebook and YouTube. It's on the description of this video, all right? Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much for tuning in and for always being so engaging. I love doing these live streams, so I really look forward to seeing you all next week, all right? Have a great day.